mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 6, Episode 8 of AMC's Better Call Saul, entitled Point and Shoot. Pretty obvious title here. This title references both of Lalo's instructions for for Gus as far as use of the gun and use of the camera. Point and shoot is also a pretty popular term for a style of camera. Like you have like your DSLRs, which are like your professional type cameras, and those ones that you can grab at Target that just, you just point and shoot. So it's kind of like, I don't want to call it a double entendre. It seems like a little bit of a stretch, but point and shoot is a type of camera, and that's also, of course, what Lalo told Kim to do with the camera after she kills Gus, which I like the fact, side note, that she points at this other black guy with glasses on, like, I'm supposed to shoot him. Like, I feel like Mike pieces together, like, it's probably supposed to be Gus. But, great episode. I don't think it's quite as good as the Nacho episode. I think it was episode 3 or 4, one of those two. Not quite as good as that one, and I think it's only because the Nacho stuff was, one, completely unexpected. That episode came out of nowhere. It was incredibly intense and dramatic, and we had no idea where it was going to go. And then, two, I think by this point, all of us as fans felt a pretty good affection for Nacho and didn't want to see it play out the way it looked like it was going to be playing out. And conversely, this episode, I feel like, well, for one, I don't think any of us wanted Lalo to live. Although, I don't know about you guys, I personally found him to be one of the most compelling villains I've seen on anything. Like, this guy is magnetic. Just the way he commands the screen. Like, I love watching Tony Dalton on this. He was pretty good on Hawkeye as well, but Lalo is an all-time great villain in my opinion. But this was not quite as dramatic as the Nacho episode because it was a little bit predictable, I think, if you've been paying attention the whole time. A lot of these events that took place in this episode were set up earlier in the season. So it was easy to kind of get to a point where it's like, okay, I see where this is going. And that always is going to take down the tension. And then also, I think that we knew Lalo's end was going to come sometime soon because we know that he's not in Breaking Bad. And when you know who's going to live and who's going to die, there's a little bit of tension taken away from that. And I always entertain the thought that Lalo was probably dead because if he was alive in Breaking Bad, we probably would have seen him because he would have been putting forth an effort to deal with whatever was happening with the Salamancas. Conversely, Nacho could have been alive, but just like out of the game, or like I'm moved somewhere else. I'm retreating, whatever the case may be. So I never ruled out the idea that Nacho could live, but I always thought that Lalo was gonna die. And like I said, a lot of this stuff was set up early in the season, but we'll talk about that. But this was a fairly straightforward episode. This video is not gonna be too long. Not a ton happened here. It was just a matter of paying off all of the things that were set up earlier in the season with the usual dramatic tension that we can come to expect from these sorts of episodes when it comes to Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. So I'm going to start off talking about, we see the aftermath of Howard's death. We pick up right where we left off. The cold open here is the setup of the suicide scene that Mike paints toward the end of the episode. He paints this idea of this is how we're going to set up this Howard suicide. That's the cold open, the results of what Mike explains. We see a shoe wash up on shore. We see a shoe in the sand. We see Howard's car fairly far from a beachfront, coastline, whatever you want to call it. The door is open, and we see a wallet and his wedding ring sitting on top of the dash. We find out from Mike that he also planned on planting some coke in there as well to kind of feed into the story that Jimmy and Kim had been building up for the whole season anyway. So we see that at the end. Again, pretty obvious, I think. When we have these cold opens in these episodes, it seems like 9 times out of 10, the whole thing completes and you have no idea what it's supposed to mean until way later in the episode. Whereas like midway through this shot, I'm like, okay, this is supposed to be Howard's. At first it comes off like maybe Howard got dumped in the water. But once you see the second shoe in the sand, you can see like the footprints and stuff. I'm like, okay, this is going to be set up to look like a suicide. So I'm not obvious, but also not one of those scenes where you sit back like, I have no idea what that means. And then you end up 45 minutes later, like, oh, so that's what the opening scene means. None of that's here. You get the Howard suicide thing pretty quickly here. So we return to Lalo with Jimmy and Kim in their apartment, and he essentially lays out this plan for them. He throws Jimmy the keys to his car at an address, says, you're going to hop in my car, you're going to go to this address, you're going to shoot the guy that opens the door, you're going to take a picture of him, you're going to come back here, all this should take about an hour. That's basically what he says. And then Jimmy says that he wants Kim to do it. And I think that, I love this scene because Kim has no idea, I don't think, what's going on here. And I looked at that as Jimmy wants to get Kim out of there. Like, if anyone's going to be left with Lalo alone, he'd rather be himself than her. And that's the way she took it as well later. But she didn't seem to get it in the moment. And the way she was vehemently arguing with him about how capable she was of pulling off this job, I thought really set this scene off. So Rhea Seehorn, again, incredible in this scene. But ultimately, Jimmy convinces Lalo to have Kim go instead, and he stays there with Lalo. Now, at this point, I'm starting to kind of get an idea of what I think is happening, because if you play this out, I pieced together that, he said black guy with glasses, looks like a librarian. I'm like, okay, this must be Gus's house. We all know the security around Gus's house. We all know the whole setup with Gus actually being in the house across the street. All that. We know everything. So I'm thinking, like, there's no way this plan could work. And plus, they know Kim. So there's no way this plan is going to work. She's going to walk, and they know Jimmy. Whichever one of them walks up there, they're going to see it on the video, the security people, and they're going to shut it down before anything happens. And that's exactly what happens. And then that's when I realized, I'm like, this is what makes Lalo so great. His plan was never to have Jimmy or Kim kill Gus on his behalf. His plan, it was the same plan that he had when he made that phone call to Hector, when he knew that they were listening in on it. And he knew that they were listening in, and then from across the street, in the sewer, looking at the laundromat, he sees everybody leave, because he knew that what he said over the phone was going to draw Gus's people away. And that's Lalo always being one step ahead. You think about just everything from the moment that he was told he couldn't kill Gus without evidence of any kind of wrongdoing, he needed to find proof. From that moment on, we got very clear evidence of just how one step ahead Lalo is. We saw it earlier with the fake death and that guy that he had to replace his body. Like, ridiculous the way this guy thinks ahead. But the whole thing, tracking down the wife, finding out the manufacturers based upon that what was that like little award thing that he found in her house, finding the people the architects, engineers who helped to make the laundromat, chasing, finding the laundromat, the plan to get everyone out of there so that he could, see how everything is working. Everything was one step ahead. So as soon as he says that he's going to send Jimmy or Kim there, and I realize it's meant for Gus, I'm like, there's no way that's his plan, because there's no way this is going to work. And sure enough, before Kim can do anything, Mike scoops her up. And I think that we now come to the realization that Lalo's plan the entire time was for them to get captured, and then again for them to move people off of the laundromat, and move people, and maybe even not even necessarily just move people off of the laundromat, but presumably to draw Gus out. So because if they're thinking Lalo knows where he is, where he can find Gus, let's get Gus out of here. That's what I'm thinking Lalo was thinking. Now, it just so happened to turn out that Gus went to the laundromat on his own accord, but I do think the plan the whole time was to get them off of the laundromat so he could sneak in, and then he could be there whenever Gus shows up, presumably shortly thereafter. So a great plan, I think, by Lalo, but what dooms Lalo here is the fact that even though Lalo is one step ahead of everybody, Gus is one step ahead of all the motherfuckers that's one step ahead. So Gus was able to, and again, this is what, I'm by no means am I saying that this is a flawed episode, but I'm saying what makes this episode not quite as good as the Nacho episode was that some of this stuff was expected, whereas everything that happened in the Nacho episode was unexpected. As soon as Gus decides to go to the laundromat, I called back to, and if you guys have been watching my videos this whole time, I talked about it in whatever episode this was, the episode where Gus was counting the paces from the plug for the lights over to that truck, and then he planted that gun on the truck wheel. My whole thought was like, at some point later, he's gonna cut the lights off. He's gonna know exactly how far he is from that gun. And he's gonna grab that gun. And he's gonna kill Lalo, and that's exactly what happened. Gus went on his rant. I'm surprised. This is a little bit of a side note. A lot of things had to go a very perfect way for things to play out the way they did. You know, Gus being able to ultimately get to that gun relied upon Lalo leaving him alive in the first place. How would he know that Lalo's going to take him down to the laundromat, or that he would even be in a position to work toward that gun? Lalo killed all his guys, but then took him around because, again, he needed the proof. So that's why he's recording the video for Don Eladio on there. He needed that proof. Gus didn't know he needed that proof. So like, there's a lot of things that had to kind of like play out perfectly. A lot of plot armor that needed to be worn in order for Gus to make it to the point where he could go through with his plan and grab that gun. But regardless of whatever brought them to those events, it was pretty clear to me that that's where we were going. So again, it was still a great scene. It was entertaining. Again, when I talk about the plot armor, the fact that Lalo even allowed Gus to pace back and forth like that while he's doing his rant, like anybody else would be like, you stand still. Like, you don't need to be pacing back and forth. Like, the fact that he allowed him to pace back and forth and then kind of like straddle the extension cord like that, I'm like, come on, man. But yeah, Gus plays out his plan. He kills Lalo, and then him and Howard are both buried within the foundation underground, the laundromat. So whenever you guys, and that was something that was predicted, I think, fairly early, that was what was going to happen, at least with Lalo. I don't know if people thought Lalo and Howard were going to be buried under there, because no one thought that Howard was going to die necessarily. But Lalo and Howard end up being buried under the laundromat. So whenever we watch Breaking Bad again, we can look at the laundromat and go, yep, Lalo and Howard are under that floor. I also like how Gus pieced together that Lalo had snuck in by seeing that slowly rotating fan and then noticing the bent blade on it. I thought that was a really cool shot, and then seeing him kind of like piece that together, I thought that was pretty cool. That's really all I have to say about this episode. But what I want to do before I wrap up is I want to pose the question of what's coming. We've got 5 episodes left. It seems like the Better Call Saul storyline is pretty much wrapped up. I can't recall if there's anything left to be done with like Sandpiper and all that kind of stuff. Maybe that needs to be wrapped up. Maybe we're gonna get some stuff of them being Jimmy and Kim, trying to avoid going down for the murder of Lalo, pretending like they don't know anything as Mike instructed them at the end. And then maybe some fallout with Jimmy and Kim's relationship with each other, given what all they've been through. So maybe there could be some fallout there. I don't find any of those things particularly compelling. So if they do that, I would like to see that kind of wrap up in the next episode. And then maybe we have these last 4 to play out the Eugene storyline. I'm assuming that within the Eugene storyline, we're going to see Kim again. I don't think anything's going to happen to Kim anymore. I mean, obviously, there's really no threats to them out there anymore. I think Kim is going to be fine. Their relationship could be damaged because of everything that's happened, but I think Kim's going to live, and we're going to see Kim again in the Eugene storyline. And I think the Eugene storyline could stand to have a few episodes, especially if people are after him and he's trying to get away. And I think that's also a good time to, they said we're going to see Walt and Jesse again. I could see us seeing Walt and Jesse again. Well, we can't see Walt in the Eugene storyline because Walt's dead. So maybe not Walt. Maybe we see Jesse in the Eugene storyline. How they're going to work Walt in, I don't know. But maybe it'll be in this next episode when we're seeing some of the aftermath of some of this stuff, and we're seeing Saul starting to get set up as Saul. Kind of like a what do they call the thing at the end of a book? The epilogue, kind of like an epilogue to the Better Call Saul season. We can see, the show, we can kind of see, Saul getting into the Saul mode and becoming that person. And then maybe we see Walt, and then we go to the Eugene stuff, and maybe we see Jesse at that point. Or we see Walt and Jesse at any point. But whatever the case may be, I don't really know how they're going to play out these final 5. Not too much of interest left in the Better Call Saul storyline. But then at the same time, I also don't know. You got 3-4 episodes of Eugene stuff. Like, I don't know. So let me know what you guys think in the comments, what you think is going to happen for the remainder of the show. And I'll see you guys next week for episode, what are we at, 9? Yeah, episode 9. Till then, peace.